but also really awesome. And so I kind of wanted to bring that into computer science education. So I'm going to talk about some of the initiatives that are happening right here in Maryland. It's kind of an exciting time. Governor Larry Hogan signed on with, I think, about 38 other governors with a computer science education initiative to bring computer science and security education to public schools. And that's going from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And we're in, I believe, our second or third year of implementing such an initiative. It's going to be a little bit, but things take time. And with that, we have a few initiatives statewide that are helping develop curriculum and getting teacher training and professional development off the ground. So Maryland just came out and it was just approved the K through 12 computer science standards. They are heavily based on the CSTA K through 12 framework, but the Maryland standards differ a little bit. We did different bands with different standards. So we just kind of configured where our classes lined up with where, when children take them, or students take them, so to speak. And the Maryland Center for Computing Education, that has been at the forefront of developing a lot of this curriculum and a lot of this professional development. It was already an initiative that was started by the University of Maryland campus system, and it just kind of evolved to include more, I guess, K through 12 educators in the process. So some of the highlights for the initiative and major timelines, high schools are to offer CS courses by 2022, and a lot of school districts are, making sure that they offer a sequence of CS courses for students. And then overall K through 12 CS courses, and or content, depending, by 2027. So there's still some time there. And then CS teachers, so teachers like myself, will have to eventually be certified in computer science by 2030. So I decided to get started on that a little bit earlier by taking discrete math next term, so that's going to be fun. And we have the Baltimore Digital Harbor Foundation that has partnered a lot with some of these initiatives and these grants that districts have been getting, and going out and providing professional development on something as simple as teaching Scratch or teaching robotics. And they have been a really great resource and a really awesome team to come out and work with teachers. So with that, in Maryland, there's also a very heavy focus for security, or as it's dubbed in the standards, cybersecurity. I know that term is not necessarily the best, but it's catchier than InfoSec or hacking. Parents kind of like that a little better. Cybersecurity, that sounds great. So the NSA, and this is by no means a comprehensive list of everything that's out there. This is just what I have experienced looking at in terms of resources. So the NSA has created Gen Cyber, which is kind of a middle school, high school resource. And the Cryptologic Museum Foundation, they actually have started work on a new building, and they are creating the Cyber Center for Education and Innovation, or CCEI, which, in education, we love acronyms. So they are actually developing curriculum for security in high schools, which is really great. And that's supposed to get off the ground within the next year or so as well. There's also a lot of local CTFs, Magic CTF, one of the great sponsors of this wonderful conference. They're based out of Westminster, Maryland, and they hold CTFs designed for middle all the way through college students. My little CTF team just competed in their first in-person CTF a couple weeks ago at the local library in Frederick County, and that was a really fun experience for them. And seeing how, I guess you can say, the college kids work in the CTF, they were really excited. And then there's Cyber Patriot. There's Cyber Patriot high school teams popping up all over the place. I know we have one in Frederick County that made it pretty far this year. And there's tons of symposiums and conferences that feature security or cybersecurity as one of their talks. And I usually go to those sessions, at least when I can. So one of the, I guess, problems that I've encountered going through this, and granted, it's still very, new, is curricular development is for mainly high school and post-secondary education, higher education, with the sequence of classes, with a A lot of districts have career and technology centers where they feature like the Cisco certification courses. And, there's been talk of putting in even more credentials to eventually get more certifications in the field. And that's great. That's awesome for high school students. Except there's little to no resources for the middle school kids. Any answers I've really received on this has been, well, it's in development or we're working on it. Here's, you can do a fun game or flash, game activity. And I'm like, that's not really good enough for me. So what do I do? How can I, teach students about security in middle school that's appealing to them? Because middle school and high school students are completely different students. If you've ever encountered a middle school student, you would know. So I get this idea that, hey, you know what? Maybe I should create and cobble together a security education unit for my 7th graders. And I kind of came up with this idea in the summer or 2 summers ago. And then I was really lucky enough to get a ticket to ShmooCon, and then I kind of just sat there in the Lockpick Village and asked a bunch of people, hey, so what should I teach 7th graders about cybersecurity and all that stuff? And from those conversations and just doing some research, I cobbled together, a bunch of lessons and units. So to kind of go, before I talk about the actual unit, I want to kind of give a little background of my class. And I am in the teaching philosophy of blended learning. So I teach my computer science course as a blended computer science class. And what blended learning is kind of combining educational technologies with traditional teaching methods. So we dub it the sage on the stage, kind of like how I'm talking to you right now. Instead of having that like lecture mode, students can kind of have choice in what they learn. There's room for failure. Granted, not too much failure, but if their program doesn't work, they're not going to get an F. They won't get 100%, but they're not going to fail because they don't have a working program. And it's more project-based learning, more hands-on, building stuff, potentially breaking stuff, hopefully not too much breaking stuff, but allowing students to kind of take control of their education and personalize it for them, so they can get out of it what they want. That's how I kind of run all of my classes, especially for computer science. And this is a very new class. I was one of the pilot teachers for a lot of these courses. That's, I guess, what happens when you raise your hand during a meeting and say, hey, we should change how we do things. And they go, okay, cool, so you're going to help. And so eventually our 7th grade tech ed course became Computer Science Investigations, or CSI for short. Yeah, that was not on purpose. I'll admit that. And this was last year's sequence. So how I split my classes up. First half of the year, I cover programming. And I allow my students to choose their programming language because despite my lack of programming knowledge, I shouldn't hold back a student from reaching their full potential. So, JavaScript, Python, Scratch, the Blockly programming language from code.org, students have that choice and what they're comfortable with. And then the second half of the year, I kind of dub it as an application semester. So that, we do robotics. Last year was a research project. We did data and encryption. And then I kind of tacked on security education, or I dubbed it cybersecurity because, parents like that term. And I kind of ran out of time, unfortunately, to do everything I wanted to do. So year 2, which is this year, I decided to, still do my programming unit, but then I cut it a little short, mainly due to my classes, I guess, fatigue, because they worked really hard. And after winter break in January, that's when I decided to start the security education unit. So it kind of transferred over to my class is a year-long class, where some classes are only half year. So it kind of transferred over to the next semester. And then that wonderful thing called snow and ice got in the way, and delays and closings later. I kind of had to recalibrate some of the content. So then I kind of put cryptography with data and encryption, and that worked out pretty well. And now currently we're in hardware and circuits, and eventually we'll get to that end of the year project. So this is what my security education unit looks like. I start off with a pre-assessment or a security breakout EDU. Breakout EDU is kind of like an escape room combined with like a CTF kind of format. So students kind of have different puzzles that are based on these lessons just to assess what they know and to see if they can kind of problem solve and maybe even like brute force a couple of the answers. And just what they pick up. So and then I do like a reflection afterwards. And, students get that frustration and I have to constantly remind them it's okay if you don't know this, we're going to learn it. Like, just tell me you don't know it on your reflection page. Please don't crumple that up. Please don't get mad. Sometimes students go, I'm going to rage quit. And you're like, no, please don't, especially with the computer mouse. And then after we do that, we get into the unit lessons itself. So I first start off with passwords and personal identifiable information, or PII. And I did not create this one from scratch. I adapted a lot of the stuff I do in this unit from the EFF Security Education Companion, which, thank you, EFF, for that. That's really great. And I adapted it down for middle school and kind of turned it into a station rotation where my students go and do a different activity, learn about password strength, learn about multi-factor authentication. I give a mini presentation about brute forcing and kind of identifying PII. And then they go, and then at the end of this lesson set, they then analyze somebody who was hacked and got their social media pages compromised, and they look for the PII and potential password information that could be exposed on social media. And then we go into malware, and I have a couple different things depending on the class. Like, they can make a video educating elementary school kids about different types of malware, or they can do an infograph. I kind of like to give a little choice and a little more creativity, because not all of my students, some of them took my class by choice, some of them that was the only thing left in their schedule. So I try to make sure that I'm putting more, I guess, interests and hobbies, for more artistic students in there. And then my personal favorite, social engineering, which I swear is about 50% of my job some days. I adapted information and research from the Social Engineering Village from DEF CON. Really great resource, love what they do. And the EFF Security Education Companion. So I took those lessons and scaled it down for middle school students, which starts off with, I actually do a phishing attack on them via a paper survey. And, you would think that students would kind of catch on. We're doing a security education unit. I'm giving them this random survey that makes no sense and asks a whole bunch of weird questions, like what's their Fortnite handle? And, every year I've done this, every student on that survey has been compromised, or they had something exposed in that simulation. And after they feel betrayed and hurt, because the class after, I tell them, hey, no, actually guys, no one's getting prizes from this survey. We then go into social engineering, and I go over the 6 principles, and they reflect on the process of how they filled out that survey, and they kind of come to realization oh wow, I just kind of filled this out. And usually I have a student well, you're a teacher, we're supposed to trust you. And I said, yeah, you are, but someone could pose as me, and I'm a trusted figure, and it could look like an email that I have. And that's what you have to watch out for, because you're a primary target. Because whose data are you connected to besides your own? Oh, my parents. Yes. So social engineering is where I really see students start to everything clicks, because password and, malware and viruses, they kind of had that through digital literacy lessons. But when you really start to get into the social engineering part, they really start to put it all together, and they go, wow, this is kind of cool and slightly scary, but hey, it's all good. And then we get into cryptography, which they love solving all kinds of ciphers and puzzles and everything and anything. I kind of wish I put more history into it, but again, with such a short time frame and short class time, I only teach for 45 minutes a day for this class. I can't do everything I want, unfortunately. And then I end with current events, and I try not to get too hyperbolic when I go over certain events, because I usually do certain events for warm-up when we talk about different data breaches and stuff. And I try not to go, oh no, this is terrible, error, danger, Will Robinson, right? And I have students look at, different, I guess, data breaches and stuff like that throughout the last 5 or so years. And they do kind of a research presentation based on that. And that's kind of new because I didn't get to the end of this particular unit last year. So they had a really good time with that. I didn't want to do careers because they get a lot of career focused research, and some of them, research security careers. And I didn't want to step on toes of other, class areas. Time. Oh, right. Doing good. So, what is the point of all this besides the fact that I want to teach this? I feel like education and, the security communities, we can collaborate and make this like really awesome. Sharing resources. If you get my business card or take a picture of the last slide, I give you a link to all the lesson resources. I'm still organizing them and formalizing them. But all the things are there. If you want to pass this along to a CS teacher or any teacher or after school club or whoever you think can benefit from this. I am all about free as well. That's a great price, especially for teachers, price of free. So, just hand it out and let people like go wild with it. Inspire the next generation, because no offense to anyone in this room, but we're not getting any younger. And we're going to need, with the digital natives, becoming and going into the workforce and, making an impact on the world. We need like those problem solvers. We need them to have the computational thinking skills to think outside the box and like try to prepare for new threats that we don't even know about yet. So that's another thing. And besides that, I'm kind of in the boat of security knowledge for everyone. Will all my students go off to be security professionals? No, I don't expect them to. Regardless of what they do after high school, whether it's 2-year, 4-year college, whether it's vocational trade, whether they go right into the working force, I want them to have the knowledge about security. Because that's what I hear a lot. I have a lot of friends that work, for contractors, and, I hear some complaints about, the user, that kind of thing. Well, if we start educating the user and we start just putting this into our curriculum and making it a thing, just like math or reading, then we're going to have more secure, general public. So I love to teach this to anyone and anybody. It also helps that my classes are homogeneously mixed, so I have the students who can go, just program something in JavaScript on their own, versus students who, don't need, I guess you could say, support systems to learn like math and science. And, some of those students really excel, and it's really awesome to see that. Professional development. So like I said, I am currently not certified in computer science, working on it. But if maybe conferences or organizations can have a for educators section, that really helps us, because we can just go, oh, hey, for educators. And then even if it's just a link of resources, like, awesome. In education, we always try not to reinvent the wheel, because sometimes we don't have time to even, just plug in our computers and get stuff going before class starts. So having that for educators section in any sort of material, any conference section is really great. It really helps us out as teachers. Teacher scholarship for conferences. I'm really lucky, and I guess really privileged not to be able, I don't have to work during the summer to make ends meet. I choose to, because I'm involved with curriculum writing, but a lot of teachers out there don't make enough during the school year, and they have to get sometimes 2 jobs in the summertime to be able to, pay rent and stuff. So there's probably a lot more teachers out there who are really want to teach this. And if you can give them an educational opportunity, because we view ourselves as students and lifelong learners, and scholarships, that's awesome. That would be great. I'll probably also apply for at least one. But mentor and volunteering. And trust me, I'm a teacher. I know about the, one more thing syndrome. Like that's probably somewhere in my teaching contract. Local and school initiatives. There are a lot of clubs popping up, a lot of programming clubs, a lot of CTF teams going in high school and even in middle school. And you can be a mentor and volunteer for that. You may have to do some volunteer training, because a lot of school districts have that. You can't just walk and say, hey, I want to volunteer. But if you can impart your knowledge on students and help a teacher to do that, or help run a club or a hackerspace, anything, that would be great. Even just going and doing a career day talk, like we have them in middle school and high school and in elementary school. And there's lots of middle and high school CTFs popping up. I know sometimes InfoSec Twitter can be an interesting place, but a lot of the online CTFs that my students have participated in is because I found tweets kind of just signal boosting them. So if you have a resource page where you can list all the different types of CTF for middle and high school students, and please make sure you differentiate between the two, because there are, with COPA and everything, we have to make sure that their data is protected and we get the permission slips out and stuff like that. That's awesome. And, just volunteering your time. So with that, I have about 5 minutes left. Are there any questions? Oh, okay. Any questions, concerns, comments? Yes. Yeah. More middle school, let's see, the Magic CTF was actually really good, and like especially if you can get to an in-person CTF, that's great. Because my middle schoolers, they've only done online ones, and they had a blast, and they actually learned a lot talking to some of the college students. So don't be afraid if it's, middle through college. Like you can sometimes run circles around some of these college students. And then Neverland CTF is another one that my students participated in, and they really enjoyed that. I also got a question, unfortunately dating myself, of what the movie Hackers was. So that was a fun talk. And then of course they all wanted to go home and watch Hackers, and I was like, please don't say Miss Smith told you to watch Hackers for homework. And those are the two that my students have done, and I know there's another one that Maryland is pushing. I think it's more high school. I'm not sure if they're eventually going to middle school. I think it's girls who cyber or something to that effect. And it can be a team of boys and girls, but the girls essentially have to be the forefront of the team, so to speak. They have to be like the majority of the team. So there's a lot of different ones popping up, like I said. And if you're interested in starting a middle school CTF team, like there's probably a teacher or someone that will help you run it. So, because that's how my CTF team got started. My students just said when they were doing the security unit, hey, so can we do this CTF stuff? And I was like, well, do you want to? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, sure, let's do it. And, obviously I told my principal afterwards, by the way, I'm putting together an ethical hacking team. That's cool, right? And thankfully I do have an administration that is very flexible and really open to different types of clubs and with that. So they've been really supportive throughout this whole process. Yes. Oh, yes, that's my next slide. So there's my resources, also on my business card if you want to get one of those. And that's all my information. So if you're like, hey, this doesn't make any sense, or, hey, I had a teacher who made this really awesome, you can email me. That's my Twitter account. It has changed since the program was printed, so I apologize for that. Yay, social media policies. And then that's the resource link. So that will hopefully take you to the folder where I've housed all of these resources. They can be digital, they can be on paper. Yeah, so that's the slide. Also on my business card if you want it. I'm very proud of that design. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys so much. This was great. People came to my talk, yay.